3 months. That's how long it had been since my father passed away. 3 months of waking up and forgetting for just a moment that he was gone, followed by the crushing realization that he would never call me again, never ask about my day, never sit on the porch with me watching the sunset. 3 months of grief that felt like drowning in slow motion. My mother had suggested I come to the ranch, the place where my father had spent most of his life. She thought it might help me heal, might give me some sense of closure. I wasn't sure what closure even meant anymore. The ranch was exactly as I remembered it. The weathered barn, the white fences stretching across the rolling hills, the old oak tree where my father used to sit and think. But everything felt different now. Everything felt empty. My father's favorite horse, a beautiful chestnut thoroughbred named Copper, was in the paddock when I arrived. The moment I saw him, I felt tears spring to my eyes. Copper had been my father's companion for 15 years. They had ridden together almost every day, exploring the trails that crisscrossed our property. My father loved that horse more than he loved most people. I stood at the fence, watching Copper graze, and I made a decision. I would ride Copper one last time. I would say goodbye to my father the way he would have wanted, on horseback, out in the open air, surrounded by the beauty of the land he loved. It felt like the right thing to do, a final tribute to a man who had shaped my entire life. I walked to the barn and found the saddle hanging on its usual hook. It was worn and weathered, molded to the shape of my father's body from years of use. I ran my hand over the leather, feeling the grooves and creases that told the story of countless rides. This saddle had carried my father through joy and sorrow, through triumph and heartbreak. Now, it would carry me through my grief. I lifted the saddle and prepared to place it on Copper's back, not knowing that this simple act would lead to a discovery that would change everything. The moment I mounted Copper, I felt something shift inside me. It was as if my father's presence was there with me, guiding my hands, steadying my seat. Copper seemed to understand that this ride was different. He moved with a gentle grace, not the spirited energy he usually displayed. It was as if he knew I needed comfort, not excitement. We rode out onto the trails that my father and I had explored together when I was a child. I remembered these paths so clearly, the way the trees opened up to reveal a hidden meadow, the creek that ran through the valley, the ridge where you could see for miles in every direction. My father had taught me to ride on these trails, had shown me how to read the land, how to understand the rhythm of the horse beneath me. As we rode, I found myself talking to my father. I told him about my life, about the struggles I was facing, about the things I wished I could have said to him before he died. I told him about my regrets, my fears, my hopes for the future. The words poured out of me, carried on the wind, disappearing into the vastness of the landscape. Copper seemed to listen, his ears perked forward, his pace steady and sure. We rode for hours, following the trails deeper into the ranch, climbing higher into the hills. The sun was beginning to set when I finally decided to turn back. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, and the world seemed to glow with an otherworldly light. I felt lighter than I had in months, as if some of the weight of my grief had been lifted. As we approached the barn, I realized that I wasn't ready for this ride to end. I wasn't ready to let go of my father, but I knew that I had to dismount, had to remove the saddle, had to return to the reality of my life without him. I took a deep breath and prepared myself for the moment when I would have to say goodbye. I dismounted slowly, my legs stiff from hours in the saddle. Copper stood patiently as I began to remove the saddle, my movements deliberate and careful. I wanted to savor this moment, to hold on to the connection I had felt during the ride. As I lifted the saddle away from Copper's back, something fell to the ground. At first, I thought it was just a piece of hay or dirt, but when I bent down to pick it up, I realized it was an envelope. It was old and worn, the paper yellowed with age, my name written on the front in my father's distinctive handwriting. My heart stopped. I stood there, holding the envelope, unable to move. How long had this letter been under the saddle? How many times had my father ridden Copper without removing it? Why had he hidden it there? With trembling hands, I opened the envelope and pulled out several pages of handwritten letter. The first words I read made me gasp. My dearest Catherine, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I've left this letter here, hidden under Copper's saddle, because I knew that one day you would ride him again, and when you did, you would find it. I wanted to tell you things that I never had the courage to say to your face. I sank down onto a hay bale, my eyes blurred with tears. My father had written this letter knowing that he might not be here to deliver it in person. He had anticipated his own death and had left me a message from beyond the grave. I began to read, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the pages. What my father had written would change the way I understood our entire relationship. "My dearest Catherine," the letter began, "I'm writing this because I'm a coward. I'm writing this because I've never been good at expressing my feelings face to face, and I'm afraid that if I don't write them down, they will die with me, and you will never know the truth about how much you mean to me. I'm writing this because I love you more than I've ever loved anything in my life, and I need you to know that, even if I'm not there to tell you anymore. When you were born, I was terrified. I didn't know how to be a father. I didn't know how to protect you from the world, how to guide you, how to love you the way you deserve to be loved. I was a broken man, Catherine. I had made mistakes, had hurt people, had failed at things that mattered. I didn't think I had anything good to offer a child. But then I held you in my arms, and everything changed. You were so small, so perfect, so innocent, and I made a promise to myself that day. I would spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of your love. I would try to be the kind of father that you deserved. I know I failed at that promise many times. I know I was distant sometimes, that I didn't always know what to say, that I made mistakes in how I raised you. But everything I did because I loved you. Every time I took you riding on copper, every time I taught you about the land, every time I sat with you in silence watching the sunset, those were my ways of showing you that I loved you. I wasn't always good with words, but I hoped that my actions would speak louder than any words ever could. I'm writing this letter because I'm afraid that you might not understand how much you meant to me. I'm afraid that you might think that my silence meant indifference, that my distance meant I didn't care. But nothing could be further from the truth. You were the light of my life, Catherine. You were my greatest achievement, my greatest joy, my greatest source of pride. As I read my father's words, I felt something break open inside me. I had spent so much of my life feeling like I wasn't enough for my father, like I had disappointed him in some way. I had interpreted his quiet nature as coldness, his distance as disinterest. But reading his letter, I realized how wrong I had been. My father had loved me deeply. He had just been unable to express it in the ways I needed to hear. The letter continued, "I want you to know about the day you were born. I was in the waiting room, pacing back and forth, terrified that something would go wrong. When the doctor came out and told me that you were healthy, that you were beautiful, that you were perfect, I wept. I wept like I had never wept before. I held you in my arms for the first time, and I made a vow. I would protect you. I would guide you. I would love you unconditionally. I would be the father that I never had. My own father was a hard man, Catherine. He didn't believe in showing affection or expressing emotions. He believed that love was something you showed through discipline and expectation, not through words or gestures. I swore that I would be different with you, but I realize now that I may have gone too far in the other direction. I became so afraid of being like my father that I became distant in my own way. I thought that by not expressing my love, I was protecting you from the kind of emotional manipulation that my father had subjected me to. But I see now that I was wrong. I see now that you needed to hear the words, needed to feel the warmth of my affection, needed to know without a doubt that you were loved. I'm sorry for that, Catherine. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to give you what you needed, but I want you to know that every moment of every day, I loved you. Even when I was silent, I was loving you. Even when I was distant, I was thinking of you. You were always on my mind, always in my heart. I had to stop reading for a moment. I was crying so hard that I could barely see the words on the page. All these years, I had thought my father didn't care about me. All these years, I had felt like I was a disappointment to him. But he had been loving me all along. He had just been doing it in the only way he knew how. I wiped my eyes and continued reading. I want to tell you about the time you fell off copper when you were 8 years old. Do you remember? You were so brave, so determined to get back on that horse. I was terrified that you would be hurt, that you would lose your confidence, but you climbed back into that saddle without hesitation. I was so proud of you in that moment. I wanted to tell you how proud I was, but I didn't know how to say it without sounding foolish. So I just smiled and told you to be careful. But inside I was bursting with pride. I was thinking about how strong you were, how resilient, how brave. I was thinking about how you were going to be okay in this world, how you were going to be able to handle whatever life threw at you. That moment taught me something important. You didn't need me to protect you from the world. You needed me to believe in you, to trust in your strength, to let you fall and get back up on your own. I tried to do that, Catherine. I tried to give you the space to become your own person, to make your own mistakes, to learn your own lessons. But I realize now that in doing that, I may have made you feel like I didn't care about your struggles, like I wasn't there for you when you needed me. I want you to know that I was always there. Even when I wasn't physically present, I was thinking about you, worrying about you, hoping that you were okay. I was your biggest fan, Catherine. I always have been. The letter continued with more memories, more revelations about my father's inner life. He wrote about the time I graduated from college, about how he had cried in the car on the way home because he was so proud of me. He wrote about the time I got my first job, about how he had told everyone at the ranch about my accomplishment. He wrote about the time I went through a difficult breakup, about how he had wanted to comfort me but didn't know how. I wanted to tell you that it wasn't your fault, he wrote, that the man who left you was a fool, that you deserved someone who would love you the way I love you. But I didn't know how to say those things without overstepping, without making it about me instead of about you. So I just sat with you in silence, hoping that my presence would be enough. I hope it was, Catherine. I hope you knew that I was there for you, even if I didn't have the words to express it. As I read these words, I realized something profound. My father had been doing the best he could with the tools he had. He had been raised by a man who didn't know how to express love, and he had spent his entire life trying to break that cycle. He hadn't always succeeded, but he had tried, and that effort, that intention, that desire to be better than his own father, that was love. That was the greatest gift he could have given me. The letter went on to discuss my future, my dreams, my potential. My father wrote about the things he hoped I would accomplish, the person he hoped I would become. He wrote about his hopes for my happiness, my fulfillment, my success. And then, near the end of the letter, he wrote something that made me gasp. I'm writing this letter because I don't know how much time I have left. I've been having some health issues and the doctors aren't sure what's going to happen. I'm not afraid of dying, Catherine. I'm only afraid of leaving you without knowing that you understand how much you meant to me. I'm afraid that you'll spend the rest of your life thinking that I didn't care, that I wasn't proud of you, that I didn't love you. So I'm leaving this letter, hidden under Copper's saddle, waiting for the day when you ride him again. And when you find it, I want you to know that every word is true. I want you to know that you are loved, that you are valued, that you are enough. The last page of the letter contained my father's final words to me. I read them through a blur of tears. Catherine, I want you to live your life fully. I want you to take risks, to pursue your dreams, to love deeply and without reservation. I want you to be brave, like you were when you fell off Copper and got back on. I want you to be kind, to yourself and to others. I want you to remember that life is precious and fleeting, and that the moments we share with the people we love are the only things that really matter. I want you to know that I'm proud of you. I'm proud of the woman you've become, the strength you've shown, the kindness you've demonstrated to others. I'm proud of your resilience, your intelligence, your compassion. I'm proud to be your father. I'm sorry that I wasn't always able to tell you these things when I was alive. I'm sorry that I let my own fears and insecurities get in the way of expressing my love for you. But I want you to know that my love for you is unconditional and eternal. It doesn't end with my death. It transcends time and space. It will be with you always, guiding you, supporting you, believing in you. When you're facing a difficult decision, I want you to think of me. When you're feeling lost or afraid, I want you to remember that I believe in you. When you're celebrating a success, I want you to know that I'm celebrating with you. I will always be with you, Catherine. In the wind that carries you forward, in the strength that rises up inside you, in the love that you give to others, I will be there. I love you, my daughter. I love you more than words could ever express. Your father, always and forever. I sat in the barn for a long time after finishing the letter, unable to move, unable to think. Copper stood nearby, occasionally turning to look at me with those intelligent dark eyes. I felt like I had been given a precious gift, a window into my father's heart that I never would have had otherwise. All the pain I had felt about our relationship, all the hurt from feeling like I wasn't enough for him, began to transform into something else. It transformed into understanding, into compassion, into a deeper love for my father than I had ever felt before. I realized that my father had been struggling with the same things I was struggling with. He had been trying to be a good parent, trying to break the cycle of emotional distance that had been passed down to him. He hadn't always succeeded, but he had tried. And in trying, he had given me something invaluable, the knowledge that I was loved, that I was valued, that I was enough. I thought about all the times my father had taken me riding, all the times he had sat with me in silence, all the times he had simply been present without saying much. I realized now that those moments had been his way of saying, "I love you." Those moments had been his greatest gift. I folded the letter carefully and held it against my chest. I felt my father's presence so strongly in that moment, as if he was standing right beside me. I whispered a thank you to him, a thank you for the letter, for the love, for the life he had given me. And I made a promise to myself. I would live my life the way my father had wanted me to. I would be brave, I would be kind, I would love deeply and without reservation. I would honor his memory by becoming the best version of myself that I could be. I would take the lessons he had taught me and pass them on to others. I would make sure that the people I loved knew that they were loved, that they were valued, that they were enough. I would break the cycle of emotional distance that had plagued my family for generations. I would be the kind of parent, the kind of friend, the kind of person that my father had wanted me to be. Over the following weeks, I read my father's letter many times. Each time I read it, I discovered something new, some detail I had missed before, some deeper meaning in his words. The letter became a source of comfort for me, a way of staying connected to my father even though he was gone. I began to understand that grief wasn't something I needed to overcome or get past. Grief was love with nowhere to go, and my father had given me a way to channel that love, to transform it into something meaningful and healing. I started spending more time at the ranch, riding copper regularly, exploring the trails that my father and I had ridden together. Each ride became a meditation, a way of connecting with my father's memory and honoring the bond we had shared. I found myself talking to my father during these rides, sharing my thoughts and feelings, asking for his guidance, and somehow in the silence of the ranch, in the rhythm of the horse beneath me, I felt like he was answering me. I began to heal. The sharp pain of grief gradually softened into a bittersweet ache, a reminder of the love I had shared with my father rather than the loss of him. I realized that my father was still with me, not in a physical sense, but in the values he had instilled in me, in the strength he had given me, in the love that he had shown me in so many quiet ways. I started to share my father's letter with people I trusted. I told them about the discovery, about what the letter had revealed about my father's inner life. And I was amazed by how many people responded with their own stories of parents who had struggled to express their love, of relationships that had been complicated by emotional distance. I realized that my father's struggle was not unique. Many people had grown up with parents who loved them, but couldn't express it in the ways they needed. And many of those people were carrying the same wounds that I had been carrying. I decided that I wanted to help people heal from those wounds. I wanted to help them understand that their parents' silence didn't mean indifference, that their distance didn't mean they didn't care. I wanted to help them see the love that was there, hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be discovered. I began to write about my experience, sharing my father's letter and my journey of healing with others. I started a blog, then a social media presence, telling the story of how a hidden letter had changed my life. The response was overwhelming. People from all over the world reached out to me, sharing their own stories of complicated relationships with their parents, of grief and healing, of discovering love in unexpected places. Some people told me that my story had inspired them to reach out to their own parents, to have conversations they had been putting off, to express love that had been left unsaid. Others told me that my story had helped them understand their parents better, had helped them see past the emotional distance to the love that was underneath. I received messages from people who had lost their parents and had found comfort in my story, who had felt less alone in their grief. I received messages from parents who had read my story and realized that they needed to be more expressive with their own children, that they needed to break the cycle of emotional distance that had been passed down to them. My father's letter, which he had hidden under Copper's saddle all those years ago, had become a source of healing not just for me, but for countless others. I realized that my father's greatest gift to me wasn't just the letter itself, but the opportunity to help others through sharing it. I realized that his love, which had seemed so inadequate when he was alive, had actually been profound and transformative. I realized that by hiding that letter under Copper's saddle, my father had given me a gift that would keep on giving, that would continue to heal and inspire long after he was gone. I thought about my father often during this time. I thought about how he had anticipated his own death, how he had prepared for the possibility that he wouldn't be there to tell me these things in person. I thought about the courage it must have taken for him to write those words, to be so vulnerable, to expose his inner life on paper. I thought about how much he must have loved me to do that, and I felt grateful. I felt grateful for his love, for his effort, for his willingness to try to be better than his own father. I felt grateful for the letter, for the discovery, for the healing that had come from it. A year after finding my father's letter, I returned to the ranch. I rode Copper out to the ridge where my father and I had watched so many sunsets together. The view was the same as it had always been. Rolling hills stretching out to the horizon, the sky painted in shades of gold and orange as the sun began to set. But I was different. I was no longer the woman who had arrived at the ranch a year ago, broken by grief and struggling to understand my father's love. I was a woman who had been healed by a letter, who had discovered that love transcends death, who had learned that the bonds we share with our parents are eternal and unbreakable. I thought about my father as I sat on Copper's back, watching the sunset. I thought about all the sunsets we had watched together, all the rides we had taken, all the moments of silence we had shared. I realized that those moments had been enough. They had been more than enough. They had been everything. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my father's letter. I had made a copy of it and I carried it with me always. I read the final words one more time. I will always be with you, Catherine, in the wind that carries you forward, in the strength that rises up inside you, in the love that you give to others. I will be there. And I felt him there, in that moment, on that ridge, watching the sunset with me, one last time. I felt his presence so strongly that it took my breath away. I whispered a thank you to him, a thank you for the letter, for the love, for the life he had given me. And I made a new promise. I would spend the rest of my life honoring his memory, sharing his story, helping others understand that love doesn't always come in the form we expect, that sometimes the greatest gifts are the ones that are hidden, waiting to be discovered. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned from gold to purple to deep blue, I felt a profound sense of peace. My father was gone, but he was also still here. He was in the land he had loved, in the horse he had ridden, in the daughter he had raised. He was in the letter he had left behind, in the words he had written, in the love he had expressed. And he would always be with me, guiding me, supporting me, believing in me. I turned Copper around and rode back toward the barn, my heart full of gratitude, my spirit at peace. The grief was still there, but it was no longer a burden. It was a gift, a reminder of the love I had shared with my father, a testament to the bond that could never be broken. And I knew that I would carry that gift with me for the rest of my life.